right, let's start. Well, we're moving over from lunch, so we are quite literally taking your lunch away from you. I know some people are still trying to eat. Oh, she's online with us. Great. Hello. So we're gonna structure this a bit more interactively than some of the other elements. Right at the start, we're going to ask around the concept, and I've been having a lot of discussions with people after the panels earlier on, around whether you think AI is going to eat your lunch. So are you worried as a creative? Do you think it's a huge risk to your industry? We're actually going to ask, and maybe this will help settle or stop you from having like the post-eating slowness, is could I ask everyone to stand up? And maybe this can even be with this group, depending on where we lie. And I think I'm in the right position. So could you all stand up? And we're going to ask, actually, that depending on the question of do you think AI is going to eat your lunch, we're actually going to ask you to move your seats, to move your position. So maybe if you can also let the people know as they're coming in, for people that come afterwards. For those of you who think, yes, AI is really going to eat my lunch, and I'm actually very worried for the creative industry, if you could please move to that side of the hall. If you're very undecided, you can remain in the middle area. And if you're actually not worried at all that AI is going to eat your creative lunch, could you be on that side over there? So could we have just a moment to move there? And I guess in this side, we could. I think we all kind of more in the middle space here on the place. But if you do think you're decidedly for yes or for no, then you're welcome to move also. All right, I can see the debating already happening even in the audience. Okay, and we will also at the very end of the session ask everyone to recheck whether they want to remain in the position or move to one or other side of the space. I think we'll start this session. Originally, the session was going to be moderated by Maria Paula McGurk. She's been working quite a bit in the kind of cultural space interfacing with AI. She sent her apologies, and I'm kind of taking over in lieu of her. And we wanted to set up the session quite interactively because we know the public have a lot of feelings around this. I was quite literally ambushed like 5 times on the way to lunch with like very intense questions about this. So I know people feel very closely. We'll be all doing kind of introductions about ourselves and our perspective on AI. But then we will also be doing, it's almost a debate model, but not quite because we're not all falling exactly on one side or the other. But we are going to ask, if you have a question, you will actually be invited onto the stage. You'll get to sit on one of these gray chairs if you're for or against, and to be able to ask your question and hear some direct feedback in person here on the stage. If you are truly shy and don't want to come onto the stage, that's all right. You can ask it from your seat, but you're welcome to come up. I think I will start then. Maybe then we can start just so that Muthoni doesn't feel more outside of the engagement. We'll start with a short introduction of who you are, what your engagement is with AI, and a comment or your position on what you think around, will AI eat my lunch?
Thank you for having me. So my name is Muthoni, and I'm joining you from Nairobi. And today is quite a sad day in our country as we mourn with countless families that have been affected by floods, and hundreds of thousands have been displaced from their homes. So for me, as we get into this debate, it's evident that our traditional approaches are insufficient to address some of these recurring crises, even as we are thinking along the creative space. I think for me, I just wanted to start where I am. And however, amidst this tragedy, I think I'm here to share a message of hope that AI offers us an opportunity for transformation and also an opportunity for us to confront and mitigate some of the world's most pressing challenges swiftly and sustainably. So by harnessing the power of AI-driven analytics and modeling, for instance, in Kenya, we'll be able to forecast and respond to disasters like the ones we are facing with greater precision and also more effectiveness. We'll be able to have early warning systems that can alert communities to impending threats and also advance flood mapping and disaster responses or coordination. So for me, I see AI as a tool that gives us the potential to not only automate and accelerate our processes, but also now to save lives and to protect livelihoods and also to build more resilient communities in the face of adversity. So even as we continue to embark on this conversation and on the debate, I think for me, I'll be coming in to look at AI from a lens of hope and also from a lens of how do we use this tool to make our lives better. So it's a pleasure to join you, and I look forward to discussing more and to seeing, I don't think AI will eat my lunch. I think it creates more meals to devour, but we'll discuss this as we progress. Thank you.
Thanks, Muthoni, and yeah, our hearts go out to people in Kenya, and I think, yeah, really seeing AI as a tool that we use rather than as a kind of end solution to anything, I think is quite an interesting perspective. So they're from Nairobi to Joburg, and someone who's very well known in the industry, and especially in the animation industry in South Africa, to Isabelle Rorke next, if you could give an intro.
Hi, I'm the outgoing Deputy Chair of Animation SA. I head up the unit's social impact and human innovation. And essentially, my unit looks at incubators, internship, township outreach programs, training, etc. So this is something that, as an industry body, we had to look at what is the potential impact of AI on our industry. And, in analyzing it all, we had to look at, we're mandated to grow the industry. And so the first threat is jobs. And the production pipeline being very much computer generated, very technical. It really raised the threat of AI taking these jobs. And so having the blessings of having an incubator gave us a space in which to innovate and test and play with all of these things. And we've had incredible results, and the potential for the animation industry, I think, is phenomenal in what we've discovered. So I don't know if you want me to go further in, or we'll do introductions first.
I think maybe a little bit more detail, it sounds.
Okay. So essentially, the incubator, we look at de-risking the pipeline, the value chain for the SMMEs. And so we had to look at, one, how do we make it a better business model? And that meant changing the old value chain and bringing all of the stuff at the end of the value chain up front into development. Now, development traditionally is already a very expensive and long process, and this added to it by adding licensing and merchandising, distribution, marketing into that development process in order to make a stronger business model. But what we've been able to do in risk mitigating across the value chain is we're able to look at how do we increase the productivity and reduce the budgets. And AI has been an incredible supporter in that. I mean, first we did it by innovating the pipeline and reducing and changing the software. So using the free software that is out there, Blender, Unreal Engine, we just got a motion capture for that, and instantly we dropped the budgets by 50% on the first episode. So now that we've done the testing on the first, we're now introducing AI. Already, all of the 30 females that we trained last year for this new pipeline, the Unreal Engine curriculum that we created and trained them on, AI has replaced all of that. All it needs is a prompt engineer to manage that cleanup process. So as we go through the various value chains, we're seeing how in the creation of the artwork, the refinement and the cleanup, which a lot of the cleanup work in animation is very labor intensive, and it's just factory level work where you're really just, you're not creating original, you're just cleaning up the work. So AI takes a lot of that away. And then of course the sped up process of how much faster AI is able to do rendering and all of the various areas of the pipeline, that as we test each one of them, we're seeing how, yes, in production, it might reduce the numbers of employees, but with a robust development, which is one of the areas that is lacking in Africa, of ensuring that script writers are well developed, because AI cannot just generate a script out of nowhere. It requires somebody who understands story and that's unique and original to a human being. Concept art, a lot of people are using AI for that, but it's a very different thing when you conceptualize it and design it with your own artistic experience. But using AI to clean it up and make it slick is an enhancement. So yeah, as we're going, one of the other things we realized in training our entrepreneurs in business models, and suddenly creatives need to know licensing and merchandising and so forth. And many of them, went through the master classes and studied it, and then used AI to help them design their strategy. So learning how to prompt AI with the information that they've learned to then put it in to have AI enhance on that. So what we've seen is that already we've dropped the budget by 50%. With AI's involvement, it might drop it quite significantly, which I think for Africa is a game changer. We're behind on the international gold rush for IP because we just don't have the budgets. We can't compete with the Disneys and the Pixars and the big studios out there on those budgets. So this gives Africa an opportunity to have a leg up of using it as a tool to increase productivity, reduce budgets, and ensure the writers are supported in producing and the artists are supported in producing more content. So we might have less employees in the production pipeline, but we'll have a lot more opportunity for more content to be produced.
Thanks, Isabelle. And then I think we'll get a bit into detail about what that actually means in terms of the jobs and the quality of the jobs, because I think that's also something you're implying. So maybe then, Alex, if you could input to that.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm from London. My job title would call myself a creative coder. I essentially write software, write code for the purpose of expression rather than functionalness. Like, if that's kind of the way how I describe the role. I'm currently an artist in residence at the Google Arts and Culture Lab, which is based in Paris, and essentially my job is to leverage Google's technology to make a bunch of, I'm currently working on games and interactive experiments, which are sort of an interesting way to sort of get people to play with generative AI tools and stuff and things like that. For me, exploring the space of AI, I first explored this. I studied in art school, design school, and I was studying the Masters in Innovation, and I was very interested in like emerging technology. And I had a sort of supervisor that was like, why didn't you look into the ethical implications of emerging technologies? So the first space I explored was racial bias in AI systems. So in America, for example, AI or algorithms, essentially that, were being used in criminal justice situations, using algorithms to predict who most likely were going to reoffend. And there was an investigative publication called ProPublica who did like an extensive study and was trying to understand like how are folks who are Black, who are sometimes first-time offenders, why is the algorithm basically saying you're more likely to reoffend than somebody from a different race who has a much more seasoned criminal record, would I say? And they began to sort of understand, okay, there's a way how, this algorithm tries to make this prediction is it asks you a bunch of different questions. And if you were to ask a lot of people these questions, like, has some of your friends have been arrested? How many friends have gone to jail? A lot of these different things, a lot of people might be able to answer these questions very well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're also somebody similar to them. And this was the first place I began to explore. However, at the time, a lot of the conversations of the ethical implications of AI was very academic. It would go in my ear and it would go out. I couldn't understand it. But I know how to make stuff. So in London, one of the things I was doing was creating a lot of like speculative provocations, prototypes, concepts that was like bringing a lot of the time my community. I come from London, I come from a predominantly Black community. A lot of us don't actually work in tech. My friends think I'm a genius all the time. And my thing was more like, there's this technology that it's going to change the world. However, we are not having a space to talk about this or shape these things. So my inspiration a lot was to create things that people can interact with, that can ask this question of what role should AI play in society. So one of the things I did is a project called The Invisible Mask. This was funded by Mozilla Foundation, who are the creators of the Firefox browser, if those who are familiar with that. The Invisible Mask is a cap you wear. It emits infrared light to the human face. Infrared light is invisible to the human eye. But with facial recognition systems, which are sort of being implemented without people's permissions, the whole idea was like, what happens if we could disrupt facial recognition cameras with a cap? That's an example of some of the work I've done. There's actually a lot more. For me, I'm here to talk about AI. I'm meant to be team AI, so, but I'm just giving a bit of a context. I don't see AI. AI is not a monolithic term, and I think I struggle with that a lot sometimes when we talk about AI. It's like this thing of, oh my God, this grand singularity computer. I always call it artificial stupidity, that computers are stupid. And when you work with these AI models, you realize how shit they are. Sorry for my language, forgive me. But the whole goal essentially is that AI is trying to do things that what humans are currently better at. And I've been, and I don't know, I'm a bit mixed about that. And when it comes to that question of like, would AI eat my lunch? My answer is no, because I'm like, capitalism wants to eat your lunch and sell it back to you. So regardless of either way, like innovation is the fundamental weapon of capitalism. So AI is gonna be here. And I think there are some practical benefits, like mentioned by Isabelle, which is really exciting. Like as a creative, I can see the benefits of using the technology in my practice. And I've done a lot of workshops. And even when I go back to London in the UK, I'm doing a lot more workshops with creatives to use AI in their practice. But one of the things I've always communicated is like, why there's a lot of really wonderful benefits, this same AI models, which we could use for facial recognition or computer vision, these same AI models will be used in war environments. It is necessarily the same tech, no difference. You know what I mean? And I think for me, I'm like, okay, I see the benefit of these things. But I always try to say, as we use these technologies, we need to be a responsible practitioner. And what does that look like, in a responsible manner of, okay, here's the benefits, but I'm also aware of the ethical implications of these technologies. Even if we do use stuff like Midjourney or the other ones, DALL-E and stuff, and you use them in your work, you also have to think back and go, this model I'm using was trained on the work of other artists who are not being compensated. They didn't even agree for the work to be trained on these models. So I think there's that thing of responsibility that as being part of Team AI, that's something that I would probably emphasize. Sorry, I took too much time. But yeah, this is an introduction that I wanted to share.
Oh, that's great, thanks. And thanks also for giving us some practical examples of what that could mean, because I think that's also quite important. Earlier on in the year, we had a South African cultural industries engagement at Fefeghe around AI in the cultural industries. And one of the things we were talking about was a possible royalty on references to Africa, African culture, different elements of African culture. So maybe that's something we can also expand on a bit more. But then last but not least, I'll hand over to Diek to talk about his perspective on, will AI eat our lunch? So far, it's three no's.
My name is Diek Grobler. I am a visual artist, and AI will eat my lunch. It has actually already eaten my lunch. I don't work with AI. I'm trained as a fine artist. I do animation. I work with animation. I do everything by hand. And last year, I was approached by a design company to design 4 posters for a big multinational company. For the same company in 2018, I designed 8 posters, and now they wanted a calendar, and I had to design 4 more posters. So I gave them a quote and kept prodding the design company to find out when am I going to do the job, because I had limited time. Never heard from them again, but the calendar was published. The 8 posters I made 5 years ago had enough information in the style and the figures and everything that they could easily, from that little bit of information, they could make the remaining 4 posters. So I think AI has eaten my lunch. I'm going to use a quote by Guillermo del Toro, the Mexican filmmaker. He says, and there's been some other versions of the quote as well. He says, "I'm not afraid of artificial intelligence, but I'm afraid of natural stupidity." And I think if we look at the whole AI thing, it is that. It's not AI itself. And today, while I was listening at other people speak, it was like AI is almost like God. You know, it becomes this abstract, the single thing. Whereas, I mean, AI has been around for several years, decades even. But I think it's the last 2 years that AI has become so visible because it started surfacing in visual culture and in written culture. Last night I was doing some last-minute research, and I found an AI system which writes poetry in Afrikaans. Now, I specifically looked at the Afrikaans one because, I mean, English AI writing programs are, or has the whole world, English-speaking world, to mine their data from. But there isn't an Afrikaans AI system. This system was developed specifically for academic study, and the academic fed a single novel into the system, and then they used that system to write poetry. And my big question, I can understand the value of AI in all kinds of applications, but when it comes to art and cultural production, I am only left with a question, but why? Why do you want a computer to write you a poem? Poetry is sort of the quintessential means of human expression. I mean, you use human language, you change that language, you use ungrammatical language to write poetry, and it's the outpouring of your emotion. How can you replace a human-written poem with a poem written by AI, and why would you want to? The AI doesn't have any experience. I mean, it mines data, it mines language, but it doesn't have the experience to inform the poem. It doesn't have the emotion. So I'm not a fan of AI in the cultural arena. I don't want books written by AI. I don't want to look at pictures made by AI for that reason, because I find it, quite frankly, dishonest, because there's no human emotion behind that.
Great. Well, I think we've got 4 really strong perspectives. I'm going to give my own, and maybe while I'm doing that, if the people who would like to start asking some questions, it'll also be a moment for each of us to have our kind of rebuttal if there are elements that have come up from the other speakers. But if you do want to come up, start thinking about formulating that question. I will be quite strict. It has to be an actual question and not a very long comment. We will, I wonder if there's bouncers which will get you off the stage. Please make it a real question so that we can actually engage with it. I think we have a lot of really knowledgeable people in their own industries here. I will give a good example from Fakugezi, the festival I work at. It's the African Digital Innovation Festival. This comes from a purely ethical point of view that we have at the festival. We're a festival that's meant to advance African culture through innovation and digital means. We simply do not allow AI imagery as part of our festival in any way, not in any part. I mean, processing of imagery, like cleaning up, and I think that's a good distinction. Why don't we do this? The reason why we don't do this is that we know that there's more than enough incredibly capable creatives in South Africa and across the entire African continent that have not had their voices heard, have not had their work seen by audiences that can change the trajectory of their career. So why give this opportunity to AI? That's the first point, but it's not the only point. The second point is purely one of quality. So I have 10 years, very direct kind of festival experience, but almost 20 years in terms of design, working in graphic design. And if you're very well knowledgeable in that space, I mean, I can tell AI from a mile away. I've also started, and this was part of the conversation that we had outside, if your event has an AI poster, I ain't going. I'm not going, and you should not be using them. You should be supporting local creatives. We know it does cost some extra money to get that concept in. Start building it into the way you have to work as an organization. It's not acceptable. And I think this is also part of growing an industry. If we're growing the industry off of the back of very generic AI outputs, all you're going to get in time is everything around you being a horrible, quite horrific vortex of generic content. And to be quite honest, that is not what we're used to in Africa. Like, we're used to really actually our everyday lives being quite full of high concept art, even just signage that's hand painted. This stuff has got a lot of history, a lot of experience behind every one of those things. A painted sign on a wall, it's an entire person's life experience behind that work. So I think we need to start taking also these ethical stands, which is also the picture that I gave, was also to say that we need to be challenging these organizations that are creating these AI models. A big part of these AI models is actually how you train them, not just the data, but the decisions you're making to shape the output. We need artists there, we need curators, we need philosophers. Like, it needs to be more interesting, quite honestly. That's why, for me, AI won't eat our lunch, because it's, as you were saying, artificial stupidity, or as you said, natural stupidity. It's incredibly stupid. I mean, it's really, if you have worked in your industry for a while, and can read AI responses in a blink. I mean, you don't even need to think about it. So I'm going to ask now, we're going to open up to the first question. Oh, we've got someone who really wants to come up onto the stage. Yeah, have a seat on this plushy gray chair. These will be the kind of the 2 question seats. Go ahead.
How are you?
Hey, good news.
Hey, neighbor. Hello. Hi. I'm actually asking the question on behalf of my daughter, who's there. I'm in my 40s, and in 6 years' time, I'll be close to 50. In 6 years' time, she'll be entering the workforce. I might have the privilege, based on age, that I don't feel like AI is competing for my lunch. But AI cannot take away the passage of time, and it goes like this. So the question with regards to ethics is, how do you engage her generation in these conversations? Because it's them that is really going to have to contend with the algorithms and whatever that will be, not in 10 years, not in 20, but in 6, or maybe 3, or maybe 5.
Okay, wow, that's a really good question. Is there anyone who comes to mind?
Yeah, I think that for us as an industry body, these are questions that we also have to look at, because we have to look at the next generation that are entering into the animation and gaming schools, and how are they informed and prepared? And currently they're not properly prepared anyway. And so hence the township outreach programs is ensuring that we give as mass numbers of people access to information. So while we were designing our growth strategies and looking at how do we ensure we engage townships and rural areas and giving people access to information, we had to look at, one, how do we simplify the training, but also how do we put together information just so that they have access to information. And we decided to go old school. USB sent to all of the library computers and ensuring that it's on the desktop right there. You don't even need internet for it, so that they have access to information on that. So that's the third piece of our township outreach that we're currently doing, in ensuring that we just make sure people have access to information.
Sorry, I think talking about so engagement, and you're mentioning something that's like the digital divide, right? I'm speaking as someone with educational privilege and who sacrifices, or our family sacrifices, to send the child to the elite school where they have iPads, where last night when I needed something done on Canva that would have taken me 2 hours, it took her 5 minutes. So I'm speaking about that we do have a digital divide, but that we also have students in schools that are engaging and communicating with each other across countries. So with respect to the age, there's a generation of 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds all over the world that are communicating with each other regardless of whether they live in a township or not, because they have mobile data and they're playing Roblox or whatever. So how do we engage those children, not just to teach them, but to get their opinions, if that makes sense?
The biggest threat, I think, around the AI thing is human beings. It is about how fast are we engaging in ensuring that we're putting legislation and policies in place. I mean, the EU released its policy during your festival, well, quite a few weeks ago, and we haven't seen an uptake of South Africa going, okay, we at least have one, let's unpack that and look at how we can add to this and have a blueprint for ourselves. So our biggest threat is ourselves when it comes to AI. Humans are the problem. The AI is literally just a tool, and we have to pick up the mantle. And this is where active citizenry also comes in, is that we cannot rely on government. We have got to, as individuals, pick up issues that we're passionate about and go, how do I start engaging to find solutions to this?
I wanted to ask them, maybe Alex, because I know you said you had a lot of examples, and I think this is where it also comes in, is that active participation. And I guess I would say part of the answer is that you're here and that you engage in actual conversation, because a lot of friends around my age or older with children are just not engaging and are quite scared in a way and just leaving it as a problem. But you actually have to get involved. And I think you talking about your work implies an active engagement.
I think it goes back to that thing of, like I said, AI is not a monolithic term. So it's so hard to just group it under all one thing. Even as an artist who works with AI, I don't necessarily use the image generators or any of these tools. I can write code. I can train my own AI models. I know how to work in Python. I know how to create a data set. And I think that's an example of, that's a skill side. And I think from when you're talking about in regards to your daughter, I think it's broadening that access to information. It is access to information, but exposing students to that because that's my whole work, really, whether from an academic perspective or from creating stuff, is that exposure to, there is a change coming. And this change essentially isn't going to stop because the tech companies are just rushing to this gold rush. So we need to prep you for it. And there needs to be that preparation process which comes from the whole broad scale. But that is something that, requires a lot more efforts. I know in the UK, companies, there has been ideas about should we run like a national campaign on AI and stuff and do things, but sometimes it's so hard because like not a lot of people truly know what AI is or the way how it might impact. Yeah, and sometimes you just get caught up in like conversations about conversations about conversations. But I think it's really about, getting to the root levels and being this stuff is going to change our world, and what is the world that we essentially want to live in, and what is the preparation mechanisms that we have in place for that, which isn't necessarily really there because policymakers are still they're still doing this existential risk concept of AI rather than looking at it from this perspective. So it's still very difficult in this period of time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question from the stage? We'll also have a comment which maybe as you come up. Oh, okay.
Hi everyone, I am a deaf person. My name is Lerato. And just my contribution about AI eating my lunch or not. So for example, at home with my situation, there's definitely miscommunication because my parents or my family members don't know sign language. So often deaf people, you'll discover that they're isolated because they're not active or they can't express their feelings within the family setting. So with AI, it can recognize emotions, it can recognize body language and facial expression and give that kind of information. So regardless of the spoken language being Zulu or Xhosa, with sign language, you've got SASL. So I'm torn in between. I'm not sure if it can recognize and really convey my message. So I'm in between the two. Thanks.
Great, thanks. I mean, there would say also that this is a really great case that it kind of, on the emotional level, again, AI is incredibly stupid and it's not human on any level. I think we'll try. Isabelle, did you want to touch on that shortly?
Yes, I just wanted to say that, as we discover problems, we then can look at how do we use AI to solve some of those problems. And, Africa has got so many problems that I think the inventors and the young people who are coming up with solutions for those problems now have an extra tool to help enhance that. Just recently, we were discussing in the incubator around creating the animated TV series that we're doing, and because it's for early childhood development, having the web series and their online presence to bring in sign language, to start teaching children early around the alphabet and introducing various words. So the potential for it may not yet be there, but if we look at how the increase in the investment in just the year, it went from bars that low to like massively high over the last year, it's going to grow at an even faster rate because now they have the money. So it's machine learning, it's us teaching it as well, and us refining it to work better for ourselves. So it's just a matter of time. For me, my argument is it's here. We as human beings need to be the smart ones around how we make sure it is a value add to us.
I see also, just before we ask these two comments, there was a comment on the Slido around a severely underfunded non-profit, then really having to use AI to develop imagery for themselves. I would still say here you really need to look deep and ask the question as to why that needs to happen and whether there aren't other ways of using your community to, like, we have really good graphics at Fakugezi, but we very carefully engage our community. We run a competition for the poster each year. It's not high cost, but it's high impact of what we do with the community. So I would just ask for like a little rethink. So yeah, do you want to go through with your question?
Thank you.
And maybe if you can introduce yourself, where you're from and your industry maybe.
All right. Hi, everybody.
My name is Nkululeko Dlamini. I am from an organization. I'm the general manager of Jaime Designs. We are involved in media and communications. I also run my own podcast called the Kulu Dlams Podcast. So I'm in media and communications, and my question behind AI is, as we are talking right now, it seems like we view AI as a destination, or most people would. And what I view it as, it's an ongoing process. It's literally capturing. So the lady here mentioned that it's identifying our emotions. We've got cell phones right now where you can literally, it just scans your face and it opens up. We know all about the nitty-gritties of AI. So basically what my question is, if there is an answer, at which stage is it? Because what it looks like for me, it looks like it's still at like infant stage where it's capturing the data. It's still learning about human behavior. It's still learning about how we are. So if we're going to ask a question and say, AI is like this, when it's saying, no, I'm also still learning about you. I'm still figuring you out as to how you are behaving, so that I am reinventing myself as we move along. So there is never an ending destination. And to come to the question of the lady who was also basically in terms of the issues that you had with your daughter, I feel with the people that are creating it or are involved in the crafting of the AI, it's more of how do we then view AI as a child itself and teach it all the human values. So basically what it shouldn't do, all the human values that we have, all the morals, all the ethics, that's the very same implementation that we need to apply in AI, because it is learning about us. So what I'm trying to get to is separating from viewing AI as this is just the complete, and which stage is it, if there is an answer for that.
Thanks. And I think I'll go to Muthoni, because I know it can be difficult when you're online to kind of bump in. And I think this connects with some of what you were saying at the beginning. So do you have any comments on that?
I think I agree with the question or the comment that we are at the point where we are training AI systems. And in the process of training these systems, like I mentioned, I view AI as a tool, right? So in the process of executing AI in different environments, for example, if you are a scientist who collects a lot of data, then AI really helps you understand your data better and, simplify your processes and make your work and your life much easier. But if you are a creative, I see the impact that AI has, especially in the creative space. But like we mentioned, because we are at the stages of learning these systems and implementing them in how we work, I think we can only take the feedback that we get from the different industries and ask ourselves, okay, so artists, normally when you're designing AI systems, one of the important part of the process is to ask the people that you're working with, what is it that they like to do and would want to continue doing. So for example, if you are a poet, maybe you like to write poems, you like the creative process of thinking about certain things. But then there are aspects to that role that you either do not like to do, they're tedious, they're repetitive, and then you design AI systems towards that. So I think in the creative space, this really gives us an opportunity to discuss and to also inform policies and also inform how innovation is done. I would mention, because a lot of the fear that we have from AI is movie-based. I'd like to mention a movie by DeepMind called AlphaGo. And AlphaGo is about the game of Go, which is, I think, more complex than chess. It's a game that has existed for thousands of years. And for DeepMind to even dare think about having AI play the game of Go, it was such a challenge and such an unheard of thing. But when you watch the movie and see the progression, I think for me the highlight of working with the AI systems was a move that, so Isabelle is the world champion for Go, and he had played with an AI system that is able to analyze all the possible moves in the world in less than a second, yet he's human and he can't analyze that much. But what happened is that after losing to the AI system for several games, he ended up, I don't want to say this, but I'll say it. It's almost as if he unlocked the human ingenuity or the human genius within him, and he was able to beat the AI system. We challenged the researchers to understand that, yes, AI is able to analyze a lot of data and make predictions, but then humans still have something above that AI will take a really long time to catch up to. So again, I would still encourage us to view AI as a tool and to see how you can incorporate it into your systems, especially in the processes that you would want, you'd give an assistant to do, or you'd hire someone to do for you, and see how that can complement your work. Yeah.
Thanks, Muthoni. And maybe I'm implying there that perhaps it's not even yet born, and it's still a tool. It's just possibly putting that out there. So thanks, Nkululeko.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. I wanted to put a comment because I think it's very interesting that because I struggle to communicate concepts to designers, I play around on DALL-E and give it to designers to communicate where my thinking is, and from there the designers take over. Again, an interesting model. It then becomes an interesting tool to really engage and not have that slip of language that often happen with designers. I don't know if you want to add on that? No? Are you good? Okay. Cool. So then let's go to, I think we have like still 12 minutes or so. So one more question, and maybe we'll do wrap up from each panelist.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Isaac Munyela from Mayor Academy. I'm the founding director of Mayor Academy. We deal with publishing books. We do leadership and management, and then we deal with academics, research. Yeah, what I want to say about AI, I think based on my understanding is that AI...
Can I ask, can you frame it in a question?
Okay.
Please.
Yes, what I'm trying to say is that AI is not a substitute of a human being. So that's the first thing that we should know. Like Gobas indicated, I'm a poet. So AI cannot produce the words, the emotions that I want to project or communicate to the society. So we have got a fear that to say when AI comes, it's like it's going to destroy, it's going to take everything away. So, but if we can understand that AI is a computer system that is coming to simplify certain things. And then lastly, I want to appeal based on the government or the government institution to say, let them speed up in order to come with the policies, in order to regulate and generate, because South Africa is lagging behind, or Africa is lagging behind in order to come with policies. They can come with a policy today, and then it will take 10 years in order to do all those processes. And then we find that when they reach that stage, it's no longer valid or relevant.
Thanks, Isaac. We're going to ask for one more question because that wasn't quite a question. Is there a question from the audience? Would you like to come up? Thanks. Thank you.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Zoe. I am a creative business strategist and coach. I'm an entrepreneur, and I sit on Deloitte's Next Gen Advisory Board. My question is based on security and compliance. I think the fear that comes with AI is because a lot of compliance or security questions are not answered. So I just want to know, have either of you considered what the compliance or security around AI looks like, especially for creatives? Like, how do we protect our photographers? Because now we just generate, photography for, like you were mentioning, posters. And the other thing is, I feel like AI is inevitable. It's going to happen. I don't think we can regulate it. I feel like it's exactly like when cell phones came in. We were like, I even remember when I wanted to break up with someone, I was like, I don't want to do it through the phone. It's not right. And now you just drop a text, it's done. So it's coming. Like, there's nothing we can do about it. But I think there's less focus on what the compliance could look like. We already have an idea of what AI is going to do. We already have that idea. But now, what is the compliance around it? Has anyone thought about it? Can anyone share on that? And what would the security look like?
Great. I think Alex.
Thank you, Zoe, for that question. So this is an area when I mentioned about one of the challenging things of using like an image generator, and the training data behind that is, images or artworks. And the way the process of how an AI model is trained is, I would download this off the internet. And one of the biggest things is a lot of people, when we put one of the challenging things a lot of artists don't actually do is look at the terms and conditions of the social media networks that they post their work on. Because what you realize is that you don't own the work you post on the social network platforms. It's actually owned by the platform itself. So then what happens is, if I've now taken your training data or your images from Twitter, for example, you can't call me out for this because it's not and that's a big, big, big issue. And it's about that whole aspect of like, where's my work being shared? What are the protective measures of my work? Because one of the hardest things as well, and there was this conversation that, I was, had to sit on a round table to the British government. And one of the hardest things as well was like, it's hard to even track what artist's work has been used to train this. Like, there are some artists who have tried to create like a particular project. I've got their names. They're creating like this open data set where you can go on the internet and you can find out your work's being trained on an AI system, and you can email the company to be like, stop training your stuff. But that still takes a lot of extensive work that, I get, that's still a Western world context. And even right now with African imagery, there's still a visual narrative. Monica mentioned this in her talk much more earlier today, this morning, about the visual narratives around, African art and imagery, and that's still, it's still a very problematic thing in a way. But the issue has been that thing of you as an artist now have to start thinking, where am I posting my work? Where is the best way for my work to be protected? Because once you put it out there, it's out of your control where it goes.
But also the spaces. We have to also consider the spaces. Like, Sorry, I was saying we also have to consider the spaces, just going off what you said, like galleries. Are they going to be viable in the next 5 years? Even now, we're dealing with a virtual room, and I was thinking if someone wanted to host a gallery virtually, they can use that company outside. I don't know what room it is. So also we need to look at spaces, like what does that look like?
Just on the security issue, this was something we discussed in the incubator around, there is no clarity around IP and ownership around this. And so make sure you focus on original content and that you're not letting AI design, because we don't know what the implications of that are. And then the other thing is around, IP already for our entrepreneurs who are registering their artworks and getting that protected and trademarked and etc. They can do that in South Africa, and that's already a big cost. But once they go onto the internet, can they afford to trademark across the world? And so when we were at Fagugezi, it was Fagugezi a few years ago, we did a hackathon where we brought in musicians and animators and gamers looking at how can we use blockchain to protect IP in creations in animation, music. And they came up with a really viable idea. But of course, our city of Joburg, who funded it, decided not to fund the implementation of it. So fortunately, I've heard other people are implementing this. So as we come across problems, we have to find solutions for them. And these dialogues and hackathons and all of these spaces become places in which we unpack the problems and start looking at finding solutions for them.
Thanks. Thanks, Zoe. We've got 6 minutes left. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just like to add to that whole discussion. I don't know if you heard about the Stephen Fry's, the English actor whose voice was stolen and used in a documentary which he didn't give permission to, he didn't even know about it. And his voice was stolen because he did a reading of the Harry Potter books, all 7 books. And the AI used his voice recording from the books to clone his voice and use it without his permission. And I read this, and then I Googled it, and I got to a site where I could actually still do it. And I did type in some text, and Stephen Fry read it to me. So despite the fact that this man and his lawyers tried to stop this thing, his voice is now on the internet. You can Google him, and you can have him read something that you write to you. I did, just yesterday.
I think that when you said that, it just made me even think now, as creatives in the room doing work for companies, you might need to have a generative AI clause, which says something along the lines that my original work for you can't be used to train an AI model. Because especially talking about your situation where it's like you've created this piece of work 5 years ago and someone's just going, let's put in Mid-Journey and see what it generates. And I think we're now getting to that point now about how do you protect that even when you do work for a client, and that conversation of IP exchange or transferring, and what is the clauses that can be used to protect ourselves as creatives who produce these type of, produce original content from our, ourselves and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that does come back well to Zoe's question around the security and compliance. One thing you mentioned was that there's nothing much we can do about it. There's regulation. We can get government to, it does take a long time, but we still need to think about it, and we do need to be implementing it. And as Isabelle was saying, we can jump on the bandwagon. EU has already done some quite quick and critical work in that space. There's no reason to remake the wheel. We've got about 4 minutes left, so I thought each of the speakers to kind of give a closing comment.
I think we have to live in reality, and the reality is AI is here. There is no taking it away. It's connected to our internet. It's going to grow at one of the fastest rates of anything now that the investment is backing it. And so it then becomes upon us to move away from being apathetic citizens and becoming active citizens, and really getting involved in more than just our job and our company, but our industries, and looking at what are the threats to our industries and what are the opportunities as well. So to not just go down a rabbit hole of, oh, it's doom and gloom, but really there are opportunities. And in a phase of change and chaos, a lot of stupidity, happens, as is the human nature. But as we evolve and it grows, like the teachers who were, striking against the calculator coming out. There's an image of teachers striking against the calculator coming out. Humans are resistant to change, and the reality is the only constant is change. We've seen technology happening over our lifetime and how fast it has happened from the last industrial age to now, that it's only going to get faster. And so it becomes even more important that we really become active citizens, that we ask the right questions, that we look for solutions to our problems, and that we don't always want to look outside for someone else to solve it. We have to step up and solve the problems in our society.
I think for me, as I've been sitting, this is something just I've been reflecting on over the last 2 days, and when we've been talking about African futures, or how do we design things from an African lens? And it's like, I think I put up on a question to Monica's talk about how can we feel empowered when the everyday is so hard? And I think sometimes when we talk about AI, sometimes it's this narrative of the powerless. Like, how do you feel, like it's the power dynamic? And I think for me, my thing is about, I'm happy we've had this conversation, and I think there has to be more conversation, especially from the from an African lens and also an African contribution to the space of AI, because most of the things are Silicon Valley creates these things, and then in a way, Africans adopt this glitch technologies. That's what essentially, there's a really good theory by, I forgot her name, Legacy Russell. She's also about glitch design, which is a really good thing I'd recommend for folks to read. But this, if this space is going to happen, how does the African voice be loud and clear and shape and contribute perspectives and feel empowered, rather than it's like, oh, it's change going to happen and things just, and I think that's where my leaving comment essentially is. It's about, leaving Isabelle's point about being active citizenship and challenging those power dynamics essentially. Yeah.
Thank you, really good point. And then to Nairobi for final comments. We've got, I think, just 1 minute left. So, Muthoni?
Thank you. 2 quick points. I think for me, based on this conversation, it's imperative and it's also urgent that we explore legal remedies and enforcement to address the challenges that come from AI-generated content that infringes on the rights of creatives. Maybe a suggestion to our governments would be that they also, experiment on using AI systems, especially in areas where it takes them so long to do very little. I think incorporating AI would help them be able to offer some of these legal remedies quickly. And secondly, I think we should begin to advocate for fair compensation and remuneration of creatives whose work is being adapted by AI systems. So this could be through licensing models or revenue sharing arrangements or royalty collection systems that ensure that creatives receive fair compensation for their work and also fair compensation for their intellectual property. So I thank you for this conversation. It's been quite enlightening for me, and I hope that I'll be able to join you next year in person to discuss further, and hopefully we'll have better things to report on AI and our lunch.
Thanks so much. And Diek?
I still find AI worrying, and I am quite glad I am not her age, because I'm old, and by the time AI is taken over, I'll be probably gone. I'm worried about the young people. I mean, when I started out as an artist, I always heard from my parents, it's not a real job. I still hear it sometimes. Being an artist is not a real job. And now I'm sort of my age, and now there's a computer program that can take over my job. So being an artist is still not a real job. So I'm really worried for the young kids going or coming into the animation industry, because all those jobs that AI is taking over, the cleaning up and the coloring and everything, that is where people used to go and get experience, which animation companies want in order to, if you apply for a job, they want to know what your experience is. And kids won't have anywhere to get experience. So I am just speaking from, I know AI has a lot of applications across the whole board of human activity, but as far as the creative industries are concerned, I am not very positive about the outlook, because the thing is, capitalism doesn't have a very good moral compass. So it is the poor and the young and the vulnerable who's going to suffer under AI, because those are the jobs that will be replaced by AI.
Thanks, Diek. I think that's a good way to end on it. I thought it would also be interesting at this stage with the show of hands then, if anyone has changed their minds. I know people sat in different areas, but let's go with, for people who think, no, AI is not going to be eating my lunch anytime soon or in the future, if you could put your hands up. Not that much, maybe like 20%. For those who are still in the middle ground, they're not sure. You haven't made up your mind yet. Probably about the same or a little bit more. And for those who definitely think AI is coming for your lunch hard. Okay, I would say, I'd actually say those are kind of equal elements. There were some good comments on the slide here. Also, I saw there was a comment from TK about a photographer that won a photography competition with AI. Go look at a Bloomberg video interview they did with that photographer. He didn't just input into AI. He works like a photographer. He used multiple images and overlay. It was an artwork. That work is quite incredible and is a good idea of what AI could do if you use it correctly as a tool. But yeah, thanks everyone for the conversation. It was really good to have this out in public. Thank you.